me go over some lessons that we learned in the pit. Number one, the first lesson we learned, according to what we read right here, is you can't get any lower than the pit except the grave. So if you're in the pit, that's good news. You're still alive. Well, you don't understand. It's painful in the pit. You know what the good thing about pain is? It's a sign that shows you you're still alive. Because once you're dead, you will feel no pain. Pain just reminds you that you're still alive. And listen, if you're still alive, here's the good news. That means God isn't finished with you yet. God isn't finished with your situation yet. God isn't finished with your marriage yet. God isn't finished with your children yet. God isn't finished with your health yet. God isn't finished with your finances yet. If you're in the pit, if you feel pain, it's good news. You're still alive, and God's power is still at work in you and in your situation. Number two, we learned this, that there's only one direction to go from the pit, and that's up. Can't get any lower than that. It's all up from here, brother. It's all up from here, sister. Listen, God knows how to get us to stop looking within for help and start looking up for help. David said this, I lift my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Number three, in the pit, one learns patience. I waited patiently for the Lord, and He heard my cry. I waited patiently for the Lord. Listen, there are a few virtues that you and I need to be used of God. How many of you want to be used of God? Amen. Without some of the ones I'm going to mention, we cannot be used of God. You ready for a short list of some of the things that we need to be used of God? Trust, obedience, and patience. Amen. Number four, in the pit, one learns how to write this down. Call upon the Lord. Amen. I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined unto me and heard my cry. What keeps us from calling for help? Let me tell you 5 things that keep us from calling for help. Number 1, pride. Number 2, shame. Number 3, fear. Number 4, a spirit of self-sufficiency. But number 5 also, ignorance. We don't know how to. See, these last 2 that I mentioned, patience and how to call upon the Lord, don't come naturally. We're naturally impatient. And we're naturally self-sufficient. My daughter had this dog for 8 years, Treasure. Some of you had the pleasure of meeting Treasure. And Treasure was the runt of the litter. Smaller. She wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. Loving dog. Okay? But her mom, because she was the runt, pretty much rejected her. Abandoned her. And so there was a lot of things that Treasure didn't know how to do. That other dogs, they just came naturally because they played with the other dogs. Mom taught them, Dad taught them. Nobody taught Treasure how to do certain things. And one of the things that Treasure didn't know how to do was howl. Okay? And, you know, all the other dogs in the neighborhood, sirens would come by, and all the other dogs in the neighborhood would howl. You know, the way you're supposed to howl, right? And Treasure she would try to join in, she'd stretch out her neck, she'd go, arr, arr. She would just, poor girl couldn't call out. So you know what? Grandpa taught her how to howl. I'm a good howler. And I taught her how to howl. And by the end of her time with us, she was the finest howler in Selma. But listen, it wasn't a natural instinct. It was a learned behavior. Brother, sister, you and I are naturally self-sufficient. And if you're ever going to call out for help, put it this way, if you're going to be successful in this Christian life, you need to learn how to call out for help. And not knowing how is no excuse. You better learn how to. Just like Treasure learned this learned behavior. Calling out to the Lord is a learned behavior. You might not be good at it, but you better learn how to do it. Otherwise, you're not going to make it as a follower of Jesus Christ. Anybody with me this morning? Amen. Joseph was thrown into the pit for telling about his dreams, how his family would one day serve him and bow down to him. Joseph hadn't learned yet that to be served, one must first serve. Joseph hadn't learned yet that before the Lord lifts you up, He will many times bring you down first. Joseph hadn't learned yet that a person can't get out of a pit by themselves. They've got to call out for help. So listen, if God has you in a pit, I'll take a survey here. I'm going to feel, you know what, Pastor, right now I feel like God has me in a pit. Well, here's some good news, okay? You're not alone. I'm with you. I'm in a pit right now, okay? And if God has you in a pit, it's because He's teaching us humility. Okay? He's teaching us compassion for other people. So the next time we pass by a pit and we see someone in there, we're not so quick to judge. Deserve to be in there. I don't blame him for leaving her. I don't blame her for leaving him. You better be careful what you say about other marriages. You better be careful about what you say about how other people raise their kids. Talking about other people's kids. Because your little angel isn't really a little angel. All of our little angels have a sinful nature that they're battling with. Anybody with me this morning? Sometimes we're in a pit so that we can learn compassion for other people. Criticize that people are always broke. You better watch it. You're blessed. But God will just as quickly take away His blessings as He gives them. Are you with me this morning? And there in the pit, God is teaching us many things on how to call on Him, and how to call on other godly lifeguards that He places in our path. And number 5, write this down. When one waits on God patiently, God has great things in store. It says here that He set my feet on a rock, gave me a firm place to stand, put a new song in my mouth, praising Him to our God. Many will see and fear the Lord and trust in Him. But how many of you know that God is going to do all this in His perfect timing? Well, Lord, I've been here in the pit. I'm waiting on you, God. Let me tell you something. One of the reasons God does things in His timing and not in our timing. Because if He were to set my feet on a rock and put me in a firm place to stand right now, with the attitude of ingratitude that I have, I'm going to fall. Okay? If He puts a new song in my mouth with this victim mentality that I have, I'm going to turn this song into a blues song about my worries. It's not going to be a praise song anymore. It's going to be a blues song about my worries. I wrote a song about it. Okay? If He sets me up as an example right now for others to see, with my know-it-all character, I'm going to point people away from Christ. But when I wait patiently for the Lord in the pit and in the prison, and let Him finish His perfect work in His perfect timing, great things are in store. And I want to start to close this morning. What lands Joseph in prison? And this is very important for you to understand this. What lands Joseph in prison is his integrity. It's not the lies and it's not the accusations of other people. Our God is bigger than that. If you're going through something, it's not because somebody said something bad about you. If you're going through something, it's not because somebody lied about you. Our God is bigger than that. You have to trust God. It's not the lie. Listen, it's not man's agenda. It's not man's attacks. It's God's agenda. It's not man's persecution. It's God's purposes that has you where you are. And God knows what He's doing. Anybody with me? And so, what are quickly some lessons that are learned in prison? Number 1, in prison, Joseph learns how to minister to others. See, if you want to be used of God, you need to stop being a taker and become a giver. You need to start seeing people not as what you can get from them, but as what you can give to them. Okay? For Joseph, before the pit, dreams are about him. Dreams are about him, but in prison, he learns how to make dreams about other people. and help them achieve their dreams. Okay? Number 2, Joseph also learns in prison that though he is forgotten by man, he is remembered by God. And as we sang this morning, you know what? Persecuted, but not abandoned. Struck down, but not destroyed. I don't remember the words. Pressed, but not crushed. Can somebody say amen? Number 3, in prison, Joseph learns the presence of God. Let me tell you something about the presence of God. The presence of God is an art. It's not a science. It's not an exact science. Do this, and you're going to feel the presence of God. God manifests His presence at different times, at different reasons in our lives, and it's an art we need to learn. I want you to write this down. As I said, God is in the resume building business. I want you to write this down. God is also in the right time, at the right place. Amen. It's business. The challenge is, God's right time for us all a lot of times seems like the wrong time. God's right place for us a lot of times seems like the wrong place. Okay? Am I the only one that thinks that sometimes? In other words, here's a good question. How could God glorify? I'm not finished. You guys are putting everything away. Where do you want to go to lunch? There's a couple more minutes here, people.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm gonna give you something else to write down. It's hard to ask. Get ready, I'm going to give you one more thing to write down. Okay? So controlling. God is in the right time, the right place business. The challenge is that we think it's the wrong time. We can't figure it out. We don't trust Him enough. And we think we're in the wrong place. Here's a good question. How could God glorify Himself? Joseph in jail. Here's the answer. The same way God could glorify Himself with sending His Son to die a criminal death on a criminal's cross. But what brought confusion for the world has brought praise to the Father and pardon for the sins. Listen, if you have surrendered your life to Jesus, whether you find yourself in the pit or the prison, trust God has you in the right place at the right time. Trust that God is building up your resume. Trust that He who began the good work in you is just preparing you for the palace. I want to read one more scripture, and then I want to have you write something down. James tells us this: consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know, as a testing of, you know, this isn't anything new, you know the testing of your faith produces perseverance, but let perseverance finish her work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. I want you to take 1 minute, and I want you to write down on your notes the pit and the prison that you're in. Maybe you've never seen it. Maybe you've seen it as a curse. Maybe you even see it as consequences of your actions. God's bigger than that. Yes. God's not going to let the consequences of your actions impede His perfect purpose and plan for your life. He'll use those consequences for His purposes and His plans. What are you going through? Write it down. Write down whatever that pit, whatever that prison is. Fold it. And in a minute, I'm going to have you come up. We're going to present it to the Lord. We're going to say, Lord, I didn't realize, I didn't trust that you're in charge. I surrender this to you. I trust you. Help me to